And to say that there is no conflict between the goals of protecting the environment and meeting goals of providing security of tenure or livelihood, I think we are living in a fool's paradise. There is a conflict. Very often these objectives do not converge with each other. And my response to you would be, Rajiv, that it is the job of the political process, the political executive, the political representatives, the local government, the elected governments, to resolve these issues politically. Uh, the answer is not to disband the NGT. I mean, that's the mindset. If you find that an NGT order is leading to eviction of people, but protection of a water body, the water body enthusiasts will say wah wah, but there will be political people who will say the NGT needs to be disbanded. I think that's an extreme position to take. I think we should work out a via media, and we must understand what is it that really is the task at hand. The task at hand, as I see it, is not to protect the people who are living in the vicinity of the water bodies, but to protect the water body itself. I mean, that's the primary task. Let's be very clear. And anything that affects, it's the job of the government to ensure relocation. It's the job of the... How are we doing relocation from... Let's take India's most successful relocation story, which Ravi Chalam knows about, which is Bhadra. 700 families were relocated from Bhadra. How? It took time. It was part of a consultative process. A compensation was paid. Alternative land was found. Alternative occupations were found. But nobody at that time said, the answer to this is, we forget about Bhadra as a tiger reserve. So I think, we have to be clear. What is it? These objectives come into conflict with each other. They are in conflict with each other. Now, it's natural that we go for a middle path because obviously extreme solutions are not going to work.
In this instant case, the compensation to people who've suddenly been told that they can't do anything there, there's no provision for that.
So we should make a provision for that. We should make a provision. Like in the case of relocation for the tiger reserve, every family we decided was going to get 10 lakhs. I'll give you my experience. I went to Gir forest. And again, I'm not picking on you, but this is the subject of your PhD thesis. When I talked to the Maldharis, they said, "Hame 10 lakh chahiye nahi." So I said, why? 10 lakh is a handsome compensation. Why won't you want to move? Why would you want your children growing up in a Gir forest? So he said, "Nahi, hame 10 lakh dijiye aur zameen bhi dijiye." Sorry? English. Oh, sorry. Hindi is not the national language as yet. When I said 10 lakhs is an attractive package, they said, I can speak Hat Laksha. Everybody understands Kannada? I don't think everybody understands Kannada is here. Anyway, when we said 10 lakhs was an attractive option, they said, no, give us 10 lakhs and give us an alternative land as well. So people have their own assessment of what will force them to move. You cannot evict people in this country. Let's be very clear. We cannot evict, we cannot coerce people to move. We cannot do what the Chinese do. We have to do it through the democratic process. And through the democratic process, consultation, persuasion, compensation, it will take some time, Rajiv. But I think that's the only answer. That's, to my mind, the answer to the conundrum that you're facing.
Yes. Yeah, we'll go to the audience now. I request you to all be very succinct with your questions and to make them questions, rather than large comments.
My name is Malini Shankar. I'm a journalist. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The thing is, national forest policy is being drafted. So my earnest suggestion is you recommend appointment of honorary tree wardens, waste wardens, traffic wardens, and wildlife wardens as part of the NGT. That, I think, would help. because it would bring in a lot of transparency and it would help in articulation and what you call consultative processes. That's my thought. And I have another question regarding Forest Rights Act of 2006. I am one of those who believes in, I believe in, you read my copy, you read Marriage. I believe in inviolate sacrosanct spaces for the tiger and its faunal spectrum, Leo. And who would answer if there are victims of wildlife attack? Who would give them compensation or a secure livelihood? Answers, please.
The Forest Rights Act, one of the things that happened of the Forest Rights Act was brought onto the statute books is that in 2009 we said that any project in a forest area would not get clearance unless the rights are settled under the Forest Rights Act. Means the rights settled means the claims have to be examined. You can settle it one way or the other. You can reject it or you can accept it. Now, a lot of projects, irrigation projects, a lot of mining projects, a lot of coal projects this way had to go through this process of due diligence under the Forest Rights Act. 14 lakh families have got individual forest rights today. 14 lakh families, which is not a small sum. Where the Forest Rights Act has unfortunately failed is in the community forest area. I think she's from Orissa, she will be able to tell you. Orissa was supposed to be one of the states where the community forests would have been recognized. And there are almost 1,70,000 villages in India out of 6 lakh villages which have forests within their village precincts. These are community forests. But unfortunately, those rights have not been recognized. So, the Forest Rights Act is, in my view, a very important instrument, as Leo said, of redressing historical injustices and prevent future injustices from taking place, and also make people partners in regeneration of natural forests, which ultimately is, I think, the objective of any national forest policy. But that is not the route we seem to be engaged in right now. We seem to be in a completely different route on the Forest Rights Act. On the national forest policy, I agree with you. See, the main thing in this national forest policy, the reason why I think they have bought this national forest policy is to give the private sector a role in reforestation. The argument is that 40% of India's forests, degraded forest area, this requires to be greened very rapidly, and it's only the private sector that is going to provide the resources and the managerial skills. The paper industry is very, very keen, for example, on taking some of the forest lands and raising bamboo plantations as captive plantations. The main result of the national forest policy, I see, will be to give the private companies a role. Now, what happens? Who owns that forest land? Who owns the usufruct? What happens to the people living in the degraded forest areas? Because it may be degraded forest, but people are still dependent on livelihoods on those degraded forests. So these questions are not addressed as part of the national forest policy. I think that is going to create a very serious problem when it comes to implementation.
Let's start with our PhD thesis. There's one. No. I can wait. Go. Can I see those hands again? Oh, somebody already has the mic. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I just want to share my disagreement on. The NGT being fiercely independent, because we've seen the judgments on areas like Sonbhadra in Uttar Pradesh and how they've not either protect the environment or the people. But having said that, I completely agree on the need for it to be intact and all of that. I just want to use this opportunity to understand your view on CEPI. You were the one who, the CEPI index, because you were the one who actually helped formulate it, the Comprehensive Environment Pollution Index. So I just want to understand how you look at critically polluted areas as of today being addressed, because pollution is such a huge thing and there are national policies being framed without really taking the entire picture into consideration. Thanks.
Yeah, the reason why I said the National Green Tribunal is a fiercely independent body because it passed an order severely critical of my role in opening up forest areas in Chhattisgarh for coal mining. Even though I had given a 25-page speaking order on why I did it, the National Green Tribunal criticized me left, right, and center, and I welcomed it. And I said, this is a sign. If the Green Tribunal can criticize a minister, and if the minister keeps quiet on it, I think it's a sign that the body is independent. That's why I said it's independent. By the way, I don't agree with many of the decisions that the NGT gives. I don't agree with many of them. I applaud some of them, I criticize some of them. But that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the, they win some, you lose some. And I think the NGT also is going through a learning experience. After all, don't forget, there are only 3 countries in the world which have an NGT. And we happen to be the country that has actually institutionalized it the most. So I hope the quality of decisions will actually improve. But I don't disagree with you that some decisions may give the impression that it is not independent. On the Comprehensive Environmental Pollution Index, or CEPI, it's a very important question that you have raised. See, one of the exercises that was done in 2009 was to identify 88 critically polluted areas in the country. Now, these 88 areas were taken as critically industrial areas. However, in our country, as you know, an industrial cluster soon becomes a population cluster. So you can't differentiate. I remember when I was a kid, Pina was an industrial cluster. But today, Pina is a population cluster. So, you have